Everybody, Dan Rather. Welcome you to this special broadcast on SiriusXM Radio. Our home channel on SiriusXM is Radio Andy, but this afternoon we're on a somewhat a broader range of radio channels on SiriusXM. But welcome to the program. This is a special program in which I'll be speaking to 5 of the high school students from Florida who had that terrible school shooting. We're expecting some of the students to arrive while we're on the air, and when they do so, they'll be taking their seats. But already in the studio with me, we have Alex Wind. Alex, good afternoon. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Cameron Kasky. Cameron, appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having us.
Well, let's get right down to work. What is it that you're making this round of appearances for?
We are promoting the March for Our Lives, which is tomorrow, Saturday the 24th, which is a representation of the American people taking to the streets to send a message to their representatives saying, we're not going to let you off the hook. You have to represent us. These are the changes we demand. These are the changes we need. And as Americans, we are not going to settle for less.
And Alex, what is it that you're expecting from the march?
You know, we're expecting millions of people marching worldwide. We have over 800 marches in cities all across the world right now. So, you know, we're just expecting people coming together and showing unity and solidarity and marching with us for change in the country.
And what do you expect, Cameron? What do you expect to accomplish with this?
Well, the march has inspired a lot of students to come seek out leadership positions in demanding change and making sure our representatives are honest and don't accept any money from people who are manipulative and trying to peddle weapons. So the march is a great way to let people know, especially young people, that their votes matter, their voices matter, and no matter what people tell them, they need to get out and speak and they need to get out and vote, because the voter turnout in this country is embarrassing. So the thought of everybody understanding that it's time to register, time to educate themselves, that's what we're trying to do with this march.
Well, we've just been joined in studio, walking in right on time, and thank you very much for being here this afternoon. We've been speaking in our little early session here with Cameron and Alex. We now have Jaclyn Corin. Thank you very much for being with us, Jaclyn. Emma Gonzalez, thank you very much. Very much appreciate you being here today. And David Hogg. David, good to see you again.
Nice to see you again, too.
We've just started the conversation here on our live broadcast on SiriusXM satellite radio about the march and what you expect to accomplish from it. And Jaclyn, let me ask you, what is it you want to accomplish with this?
Well, the march is basically a visual representation of how many people support what we support. And it's basically a win-win. Either we vote them out in November, or they finally listen to us and change their agenda. That's what the march represents. And
is there any thought in your mind that you may have lost some momentum?
I don't think so. I think it's been going up since the start, and I don't think we're going to lose any momentum after the march, because we have huge things planned. We're going to be traveling to local communities and reaching out to other communities that deal with this on an everyday basis that haven't had the spotlight on them. So we're sharing our platform now.
Well, Emma, what in your mind is the single most important thing you want to say to people?
I think when I'm confronted with the opportunity of telling people in my most raw form, I want them to know that we have the best intentions here. A lot of people don't think that what we're doing is right. They think that we're trying to take away all guns, and that's not what we're trying to do. They don't understand that we went through a very serious trauma, and that there are millions of people in this country who go through that trauma, who've been through that trauma, who will go through this trauma. And unless we do something to change this, everybody's going to keep living in fear, disarray, complete and utter panic. And that's not what America is or should be. The guns that are used and the guns that are not regulated, those are the ones that we have a problem with. It's not, simple handguns, hunting rifles. We don't have a problem with anything that isn't military style.
You don't have a problem with anything that's not military style. I may want to pick up on that, as we go along. But, David, tell me what, you've been involved with this for quite a while now. What would you say is the thing that in your mind sticks out that people are most prone not to understand about what it is you're trying to do?
I think one of the things that is so easy for people to misunderstand about what we're really trying to do here is when people say that we're trying to take all their guns, when people say that we're trying to infringe upon their Second Amendment rights, we're not. In the same way that people have a right to own a firearm, we have a right to live. It's as simple as that. And in the same way that I want people to understand that we just want simple limitations on the Second Amendment where, like with the first, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. I don't think, and I think the rest of America thinks this too, that you shouldn't be able to get an assault rifle if you're a mentally unstable individual, or you shouldn't be able to get a weapon, period, if you're a mentally unstable individual, somebody with a criminal history or a history of domestic violence. It's plain and simple, except people like at the NRA and different gun lobbyist organizations and the media that support them like to misconstrue what we say so that it seems like we're trying to take all guns, and we're not. We understand the purpose of reasonable and sensible gun ownership in this country. We just want to make sure that the people that are mentally unstable and have a criminal history are not able to get these guns.
Cameron, tell me who you were before the shooting took place. As a person, as a student, who were you before it took place?
Well, I always cared about the issues going on. I always asked questions. I frequently got frustrated when things went wrong, even when I knew that I was very young and I thought there was nothing I could do about it. And my entire life I had this voice, and I would never stop using it. I would never shut my mouth. And I always thought this is the biggest problem with me as a human being. For the rest of my life, I'm just going to be a motor mouth who's worth nothing and can't put anything to his words. But in the car ride on the way back after I'd been picked up from what happened at my school, I realized I have this voice, I have this message, I have this uncontrollable passion in me to express this is what I need to do. I don't know what's happening to me right now, but I need to put it all aside because I've seen this happen before. I've seen these shootings happen before, and I've seen people not care about them. And I realized the one thing I'm good at in my life is communicating. The one thing I'm good at is having a message that I believe in and doing what I can with it. So I said, this is what I need to do right now. I can't let people control our narrative. I need to speak out. I need to say what happened, and I need to tell everybody that we've seen this before and we cannot see this again. So to answer your question, before all of this, I was just some kid with a mouth, and this kind of taught me how to use it.
Jaclyn, how about you? Who were you before the shooting?
Honestly, I'll be the first to admit that I wasn't very politically involved before the shooting. I didn't keep in touch with the world around me as much as I should have, and until it affected me personally and the laws that our legislators make affected me personally with a huge slap in the face, I didn't care as much as I should have. And that's why we're trying to push for kids our age to get involved in politics, make it a part of their everyday life, because we don't want it to affect them like it affected us, because that's not fair. And we're doing that for them, and we're doing that for the kids that this has affected. But me as a person, I'm a completely changed individual, and it happened because of something bad, but we're trying to make some good come out of it.
You say you're a completely changed individual. What's the biggest change in you?
I don't get to hang out with my friends like I used to. I don't get to hang out with my parents or play with my dog. I don't get to watch TV. I don't get to go to the park or the movie theater. I've completely indulged myself into everything we're doing. And especially because we're in the public eye now, I'm terrified to go anywhere because we're against the largest gun lobby group in the nation. it's scary. And I just really don't want another teenager to be put in the same situation as I was. I went from a normal teenage girl to hiding in a classroom for my life and then being thrust on a national stage. And that's not normal. So we're trying to make that not a reality for other normal kids that should maintain a normal life.
And Alex, how about you? Who were you before the shooting?
I think my personality hasn't changed, but who I am as a person has changed. In the sense that, you know, when veterans come back from war, they experience PTSD, but we're experiencing a form of that in the sense that silence is scary because, you know, I was trapped in a room silent for an hour and a half, but at the same time, loud noises are scary because we were there. We heard the gunfire. And then there's just, everything is different in life. There will never be a normal because our normal was completely screwed up for us. Time has no concept anymore. It's just that hours seem to go by and time doesn't exist. So it's just that we're all different people now, but the fire within us and the heart within us and the people that we were are still there. We're just in a different mindset.
You said, and of course it's true, you were there. Describe for me what you remember the most when you were there.
I think the thing that's going to stand out is just that it happened and that we all were able to experience this tragedy in a sense that, you know, I was in a room for an hour and a half with 65 people that I consider my family now. And I think that's something that I'll just never forget.
Emma, who were you before this shooting?
I was pretty much the same person, I'd like to think. I talk a lot more now, though, if that can be possible. I talked so much before. It's kind of like Cameron, I had a mouth. But I do a lot more of waking up early and at random times, going to sleep late. And I was never a person to go to sleep late before. And I've poured my entire life into this, just like Jackie said. Like, you don't do anything anymore except this. You don't think about anything anymore except about this. You constantly remember statistics. You think in numbers and making sure that you remember everything that you need to remember. That you forget everything from 1 minute to the next.
Do you have nightmares?
No, not really. I sleep pretty fine. I was not in a position during the shooting where I actually heard gunshots or saw anything, so I was one of the luckier people in that.
But as I understand it, Alex, you did. Have you had nightmares?
Not really. It's just the fear comes more from when I'm awake than when I'm asleep, I think.
Comes more from?
When I'm awake than when I'm asleep.
All right. David, how about you? Have you had nightmares?
Yeah, I haven't really had any nightmares because, to be honest, we are so exhausted. My mind gets to the point where I don't have time to dream when I'm sleeping because my mind just completely shuts down and needs to rework everything and just clear all the junk out, I guess. But I'd like to make a comment on what Jackie was saying, what Alex was saying. With Jackie, she was saying that people need to get out and be politically active every day, and I think it's important to realize that this happened to us once. We come from a community of privilege, and it's not a place where these type of things happen, but in many communities across America, this is an everyday thing. I talked to some students at Thurgood Marshall Academy here in D.C. yesterday, and every day they have to worry when they're going home whether or not they're going to be shot walking home. And if you're not becoming politically active for us, do it for them. Because every day you need to be politically active because these kids are having to live through this every day because of your political inaction and mine too. And I think everybody that doesn't get out and vote and isn't politically active is absolutely complicit in these children having to live like this every day, because that's not the America that I know. And I don't think that we can accept gun violence regardless of what communities it occurs in or anywhere else. And on the topic of what Alex was saying in how he was talking about the PTSD of the situation and how people come back from war and have that, two things. It's important. One of the most insane things to think about is that more people have died since 1968 on the streets of America as a result of gun violence than have died in war. And at this point, with the PTSD that he's talking about, we're getting it, because we're turning our streets and our schools and our clubs and our movie theaters and the streets of America into a war zone, because we're feeding it with these weapons of mass destruction. Like the other night, I moved in my bed and it squeaked a little, and I didn't hear what you would normally expect to hear, which is just squeaking. I heard screaming. I can't hear helicopters the same. Whenever I hear them flying over, I think of the time where I was out there trying to make my voice heard as a student journalist and working as hard as I could for those 17 individuals that no longer could make their voice heard. And that's what I would say to those people that are out there that think their voices don't matter. You are still alive. Your voice still matters. It is absolutely your responsibility for those 17 individuals and the thousands and millions of other people that have died as a result of gun violence in America to get out there and be politically active, because those people no longer can.
You could even do it for selfish reasons. Because what if you get impacted by this in the future? Bullets don't discriminate, and neither do shooters most of the time. We came from a perfectly affluent community. It was the safest city in Florida, and it happened to us. So what makes you think it wouldn't happen to you? Do this for yourself. Do this for your family. Do this for your neighbors. Do it for anyone.
And I think the other important thing to realize, Dan, is that I think the NRA is banking on our generation forgetting and the American public moving on from this. What we're seeing with, for example, what Congress is trying to implement right now, where they're saying that they can do research with the CDC, they already were able to. The problem was that they still don't have funding to research it. What Congress needs to do is create a categorical grant specifically for gun violence research through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, so that we can research something that kills more people every year than leukemia.
Cameron, well, you said that you've long before the shooting, been concerned about and interested in the problem of gun violence. But were you politically active before? I mean, did you work in some politician's campaign, somebody running for office? Did you write letters to your congressman before all this happened?
Well, the first time I officially took a step into political action was when I was 7 years old. I went to an Obama rally with my brother. And that was the defining moment in my life, because I got to see somebody in person, and I got to see somebody who was representing all of us come and speak to us as people. And I connected with a politician. I saw somebody who was running for office, and I said, that's somebody that I want my country in the hands of. And this was before I could vote. This is before I could explain what voting was. And but other than that, I never was involved enough, and I always wanted to be. I always looked at things that were happening and I thought, I know how they could have fixed this, or at least I can try and figure it out. I thought that since I had not been corrupted like these politicians, since I had morals and I was trying to fight for what was right and not for my own benefit, I should be getting involved with this. And unfortunately, it took my community getting hit right at home for me to get active. And that makes me feel like I'm being selfish, because I only did this because we were hit. Well, we have to forgive ourselves for that. What we're doing is for those we've lost. We are standing for them, and this is an important fight. And at first we were the only people in the spotlight, but now we're part of something so much bigger. Student leaders around the world stepping up, making clubs at their school, the walkouts. We are trying to get others active the way we weren't until we had to deal with this tragedy. And people all over the country are getting active even when they haven't been hit the way we have. They understand that change needs to come. And the fact that they're doing this and these people are taking the lead, that's inspiring to us.
Jaclyn, are you not concerned that Congress up to and including this present moment has done, as best I can figure it, absolutely zip zero?
Well, right now, Congress has actually done something. I mean, in the state of Florida, they passed a law that raises the age to buy a firearm to 21 and gives a 3-day waiting period, and that's something. And we recognize that it's something. It's a step in the right direction. Obviously, we're not satisfied. Obviously, we're not going to stop. That's definitely not close to enough. But we had our governor defy the lobby group that he's supported by. Rick Scott passed this bill, and the NRA sued Florida. And maybe that's because he's running for re-election, and that's the only reason why he did it, but it's something, and we recognize that. But we're not stopping.
I want to follow up on the sentence, it's something, with the governor, what he signed into law. We're going to take a quick break here for those of you listening. This is coming to you live and direct from Washington, D.C. on SiriusXM satellite radio, and we'll be back, but first, please, these messages. Welcome back, everybody. We're on this special edition of Dan Rather's America, live from the SiriusXM satellite radio studios in beautiful Washington, D.C. Gorgeous day here today. A little windy and a little chill, but you can feel spring coming. It's not here yet, but you can feel it coming. And I'm joined here today, ahead of tomorrow's March for Our Lives rally, by 5 of the student survivors and activists from Parkland, Florida. 17-year-old high school junior Jaclyn Corin, 18-year-old high school senior Emma Gonzalez, 17-year-old high school senior David Hogg, 17-year-old high school junior Cameron Kasky, and 17-year-old high school junior Alex Wind. I want to pick up on something that was said earlier. I have so much ground we want to cover here this afternoon. But let me come back to you for just a moment, Jaclyn. You were saying that you were pleased, at least up to a point, as I understood it, with the Florida governor signing the new legislation, signing it fairly quickly. Enough, considering he did it quickly. Give him credit. He and the legislature moved quickly. Enough?
I don't think it's enough at all. I mean, I'm just happy that the conversation has been continued, but it's not going to keep a lot of shootings from happening. That's a Band-Aid to cover a deep wound. It's not going to do anything. There's still going to be privatized sales. There's still going to be straw man purchases. People are still going to die on our streets. We can't be satisfied enough to stop. We're not stopping until we have especially stricter gun laws. We need a universal background check system. We need a high capacity magazine ban. We need an assault weapon ban. But that is a long-term issue because people are scared of change, and we understand that. So we're going to vote in the politicians that aren't scared of change.
We can't settle for less. We've been settling for less just because it's easier. And, you know, the government moves slow, and everybody says because the government is such a difficult thing, let's just pass something that is easy and can get easy bipartisan backing. But us letting things slide, us not addressing the real problems and just trying to get a baby step done, that keeps happening, and these shootings keep stacking up. I mean, too often we feel like we're statistics instead of people. We feel like we're survivors, and what's important is that we realize that the same thing happens at every shooting. It's not, there's no mental disability to tie everything together. There's no specific thing. The only thing that appears every time is the weapon of war that requires training for soldiers that citizens can buy and citizens can cause real destruction with.
And
Emma, let me come back to you for a moment. For those people listening in, young people, old people, in between in terms of age, and want to get involved, how do they get involved? What can they do? We're speaking on Friday. The march is tomorrow. What, if anything, can they do to get involved?
A very easy way to get involved is to listen to what's being said. Get your opinion or your facts, get your argument the way that you want it, and ask someone, can I write an article for you? Get involved with your local newspapers, start letter writing campaigns with your school, set up a town hall, confront your politicians directly and ask them, get out here. You're representing us. You're our representatives. You need to listen to what we're saying because we voted you into office. You work for us, not the other way around. We're paying your salary here. And, this is a delegate conversation, not a trustee conversation. You need to represent us. And one of the best ways to get in contact with your representatives and show them a piece of your mind is to march with us tomorrow. Anywhere, literally anywhere. There are marches all around the world. Go to any of them.
David, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah.
Because I have this vision of any number of people who either are listening to the broadcast or hear about it and say, well, I'm kind of coming to this late and it's only the day before. Is there anything I can do?
Yeah, there's always something you can do. In fact, right now, assuming that you aren't driving, or when you get home, you can go to marchforourlives.com and find your closest local march. There's over 816 worldwide. We have one on every continent, actually.
I think it's over 833.
Excuse me, now they go where?
Yeah, it's marchforourlives.com. And there, on that website, it's very simple. There's a map, and you can see where the closest marches are to you, regardless of where you are in the world listening right now. But I want to go back on one thing that Jackie said also. She was talking a lot about the Florida bill that we've had passed and how a lot of people are praising Governor Rick Scott for that. And I think it does show that he kind of did stand up to the NRA, but what's important to realize is that in Florida, you can still make a private purchase under the age of 21 because that bill doesn't cover it. It doesn't cover universal background checks. What it does is bring more law enforcement into schools, and what I'm really worried it's going to do in the end, more than anything, is increase the racial disparity we see in our justice system because black students are suspended at a rate 3 times higher than white students. My school is a place of privilege, so we don't see this nearly as much as many other communities. But what I'm very worried about is when we have more law enforcement, it's going to breed more distrust between law enforcement and different communities across America and increase the racial disparity we already see so much of in our judiciary systems, and that's something that we have to face.
Alex, let me come back to you for a moment. To that person listening in who owns a gun, maybe likes to hunt, maybe feels the gun is necessary for his or her own protection, or maybe some combination of that, and is saying, to themselves, listen, quote, I feel these young people's pain. I identify with them, but I'm not going to, quote, let them come for my guns. You say what?
We're not coming for your guns. That's the biggest thing, is that it is okay if you own a gun. David and Cameron, both of their households, their fathers own guns. It's not an issue of owning a gun for protection, because I understand a lot of people feel that they need that they have the need to be protected, that they feel that they need to be protected, especially if, you feel that you're not in a, quote, safe neighborhood. Because at the end of the day, this country was built on the foundation of we have the right to bear arms. And we're not saying we don't have the right to bear arms, but what we're saying is that when you put an AR-15, which is a weapon of war, in the hands of a 19-year-old or an 18-year-old or any civilian for that matter without any training, that's a weapon that's sole purpose is for killing people. It's not for protection. It's not for hunting. It's for killing people.
And at the end of the day, it's just like you don't drive a NASCAR in the street because it's fun. If you want to drive a NASCAR, you got to have a license at the very least. You have to know somebody who can get you there, and then you drive it on the track. You don't drive a NASCAR in the street because it's fun. You don't take an AR-15 in your backyard and shoot cans for fun, because that AR-15 can end up in the wrong hands very quickly, very easily. And that is exactly what we're fighting against, is those specific weapons, not all guns.
I think the point there is there are gun ranges where you can use these weapons. I was at a gun range for the first time when I was less than 10 years old. You don't need, if you have such an important desire to fire off these high-capacity weapons, there are controlled places where you could do them without hurting other people. I mean, there are so many accidental gun deaths in the United States every year because, unlike in David and my household, some guns are not responsibly hidden and taken care of. Some guns are just lying around, and a lot of young children pay for that every year.
It's an obvious question, and so I'm going to ask it. And let me start with you, Jaclyn. If President Trump were here, and if he were listening, and I don't want any laughter that he tends not to listen. If President Trump were here and listening, what would you say to him?
I would say that we're giving you a clean slate. If you want to support what we're for, please do. We're not going to keep what you've said in the past in our minds if you support us now. But if you don't support us, then you're out of here in a couple years, and it's going to change eventually with or without you.
I think it's also important to realize that many of these people that are currently have an A+ from the NRA, they can we can all stand up as Americans, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans against these people that are pushing these laws that don't really protect the Second Amendment, just make it way easier to get a weapon of mass destruction like the AR-15. And when those people stand up and denounce the NRA, others too will follow. But what it requires at first is those first leaders, and they can be on the right side of history. They can be on the side where they say no to the NRA and they say yes to the USA. They stand up with the children. We stand up together. And the other thing that's important to realize is that the NRA doesn't actually spend, in comparison to many other different lobbyist organizations, they don't spend that much money on lobbying. Where their power lies is in many of their people that are members, which are predominantly retired people that go out to these congressional meetings and make their voices heard. To those people, I say, please listen to I'm sure many of them are grandchildren, please listen to your grandkids. Listen to the children of America if you don't have grandkids, and listen to the future. Help us push this, because you guys have really... this has happened because of a lot of political inaction before we were even born. For example, Columbine happened before everybody in this room, except you, Dan, in this interview, were born. But it's not too late for them. They can stand up with us, and we can stand up together as Americans to take down the NRA and say, no, we're going to put the USA before the NRA. But we have to have those leaders initially stand up on both sides of the aisle.
But now I want to come back, and Cameron, your turn. Let's talk about the ultimate leader, President Trump.
Yeah.
David was making a good point, to speak to everybody on the political spectrum, which is important. But if President Trump were here in the room and listening, what would you want to say to him?
Well, I would say, very similar to what Jackie said, I would say, President Trump, you're the leader here. You are the executive branch. You are these politicians on both sides, they listen to what you have to say, whether or not they follow your every opinion. These people listen to you, and you have the opportunity here to put the American people first. And I understand that this organization gives a lot of money to your party and to you, but we are paying for it. And the Stop School Violence Act, that does not say the word gun once. And it's important that we realize that there's one thing that keeps on happening, and you can save these children, President Trump. If you take action right now, if you look at what we have on our petition on marchforourlives.petition.com, if you listen to what the people are demanding and do it, the American people will benefit. You can help the American people. You can make us safer, and you can protect us. And inaction is the worst thing we could do here, because this problem will not go away. And the American people are starting to realize that we don't have to let it go away.
Let me come to you now, Alex. The president's in the room. He's listening. What is it you want to say to him?
I think that if President Trump were listening right now, I'd tell him that talk isn't enough. We need action. He's one of the very few people in this country that can force action to be done. And I think that if he really wants change in either mental health or gun reform or school safety, he can't just talk about it. He needs to do something about it. Because the issue is that there's an incumbency issue in our Congress and in our Senate with the executive branch, and it's not just the Republicans, it's the Democrats too, because this has been an issue for too long. And it's not just about schools, it's about churches, it's about movie theaters, it's about hotels, it's about airports, it's everywhere, it's on our streets, it's in nightclubs in Orlando. And the thing is that this has been going on for so long, and this has been an issue for so long, yet there hasn't been gun legislation in 10 years in this country. Why is that?
I think if I could say one last thing to President Trump, if he was listening, is look at your own kids. You've had them your entire life. You have them. You have grandkids too. Many people that are out there, possibly even listening, have lost their kids. And you can stand with us and take action. You can stand up and say we're going to work as hard as we can to ensure that this is not going to happen again. But when you make these promises, like you said, when you said that you were going to raise the age to 21, and then you meet with the NRA and then you stand back down, you aren't standing with the kids, you're standing with the NRA. Look at your own kids. People like that across America are dying every day. Let's change that.
I'll be coming back with Emma Gonzalez and ask her what she would say to President Trump, but we need to take another break here. So we'll be back in just a few moments. Welcome back, everyone, to this special edition of Dan Rather's America, coming to you live from Washington today. I'm here with 5 of the student survivors and activists from Parkland, Florida. This is ahead of tomorrow's March for Our Lives. And Emma Gonzalez, I said to you that when we came back from the break, I'd give you a chance at saying what you would like to say to President Trump if he were in this room today.
I think first I'd say, hello, Mr. President, and hey, we're so close to the White House. That's pretty cool. We really want to implore you to help us on this, because this is very clearly, you know, a movement that's going to make reverberations, tsunami waves for years to come. And you have a really, like, striking opportunity to be the hero here. There's so much that you can do. And we would be so thankful if you did help us. You have every opportunity to be the guy who saves the day, you know? And we would very, very much appreciate if we could maybe get work done together like that. If we could try to, you know, combine efforts, if we could talk to people together, if we could get this progress on moving gun control into the forefront. Because to us, you're not a politician, you're the president. You're the one at the end of the day who makes all the good decisions. And if you can help us with this, if you can help us get gun control or gun safety, if you can help us regulate guns, it's just a question of, like, cars are so much more regulated than guns are. And guns were, like, specifically designed for destruction. You can use them to hunt, but they're specifically designed for incapacitation. And, you know, cars are just made for traveling. So why not add more regulations to the gun industry, to gun purchasing, distribution, manufacturing? Why not take the guns that cause so much damage? Why not take those specific guns, move them just straight to the military? Don't let civilians get their hands on them when all they do is use them for destruction, pain, and suffering.
David Hogg, I have seen, and I'm not playing the old man role here, but I have seen movements come and go, marches come and go. This tomorrow, is this a climatic moment?
No. This is not a climatic moment. You know why? Because this is a lifelong marathon. We can use this as our starting point. And I think what's important for people to realize is anger and fear are really good instigators at starting action, but they're essentially adrenaline in this race that we have. It's an ultra marathon that we have ahead of us. And what really is the stamina in this situation is love and compassion for those that we don't agree with and those that stand in opposition to us, and understanding that our strength is not in our unity but in our diversity. Our strength is in our unity as American citizens and our diversity of thought as such. We all come from different places. Let's come together as the Americans that we are and fight for change. This is just the beginning, though. This is going to be a lifelong fight for many of us, because again and again, the sad thing is if we don't see action, we're going to see, hopefully we don't, but in all honesty, we probably will see another mass shooting. It's terrifying, and I pray to God it doesn't happen, but it can, and it likely will if we don't see this action taken.
I think.
Well, Cameron, let me ask you about something here. That David just said, this is not the climatic moment. Do you see this as the beginning? And if it is a beginning, then what's the next step? Once the march is over, once the excitement of the march begins to fade, everybody goes back to class, then what?
Well, I do see it as a beginning. The past slightly over a month, we've been mobilizing. The country has been unifying. We've been moving together. We've been agreeing on this issue. You'll notice 97% of people, according to a poll, agree that universal background checks are absolutely necessary. And as Alex would say, if you delete the margin of error, that's basically 100%. These are issues that we agree on. And for a little while, America has been getting ready to step up together. Well, the march is the first time we step up together, and it's one of the biggest. so far, because while we did have the walkouts and we're excited to see more walkouts until change comes along, we are here in every city. This is all at the same time. This is one push, and I'm so excited to march alongside everybody. But after that, we have a lot of important things. We are going to be encouraging everybody to start town halls, to get closer in touch with their representatives. We are going to be having town halls all over the country. Groups are mobilizing. Groups are getting together on a local level and saying, if everybody starts small, we can make something big and beautiful happen. And as we continue on with this movement, we are going to be inspiring everybody to use their voice and speak up and make these great things happen. Because as you saw with the walkouts a few days ago and the march tomorrow, when America talks, our politicians have to listen. So as we move on, we are just going to be saying, America, talk, but before you do, educate yourself. Educate others. Make this a conversation. When this is a debate, all we're going to be is separated. A debate does nothing but cause tension and bring us back. A conversation is what we need, because a conversation is what keeps us moving forward. The march is the beginning of the conversation.
Beginning of the conversation. Jaclyn, no matter how much you talk, no matter how much you march, as an individual or as a group or as a movement, the final decision is at the ballot box. And I want to point out to you, and I believe I'm correct in this, I'm going from memory, in the 2014 off-year elections in 2014, roughly 16% of young people, that is people 18 to 24, 16% of those eligible voted. That was all that got to the polls. If that happens again in November, no matter how much you march, no matter how much you talk, it isn't going to amount to much.
Of course it won't amount to much, but I don't think that's the reality anymore. I think that young people have woken up. We're here to shake our politicians awake now. People are realizing how much their decisions and laws are affecting us. And people need to understand that politicians are right behind our own houses. We have local offices. Each congressman has a local office in their own district. You as an individual can go up to that office and speak to your congressman. It's not that far away. It's not DC is a long lost world. It's right there because they're supposed to represent you. You're their constituents, and that's what it comes down to. They can't follow their own agenda. They have to follow your agenda, and you have to make your agenda be known. And you can. It's not hard.
And you've actually seen in some very recent elections, things are changing. There are different voter turnouts. What I think has happened through this movement is people our age, our peers, the people who are going to be voting, one of the largest voting demographics, are realizing if we keep on sleeping on this, if we keep on wasting our voice, nothing's going to change. We learned the hard way that our votes are the most powerful thing we have. And now I think you'll see in this upcoming election that we are going to use them.
Yeah, exactly. I think in the same way that those people didn't turn out to vote, I think they're going to start doing that because sadly, we're being forced into it. It's a vote for our lives and a march for our lives too. These people need to realize that actually, the other day when we were at Harvard, I was looking at some of the polls that a pollster gave us, and it turns out the groups that have the least faith in America are the groups that vote least. People need to realize that you have no right to complain about the state of this country if you don't make your voice heard. If you want to have free public college education, for example, make your voice heard. Elect somebody who is going to represent you and not the lobby organizations that want to continue to suppress your vote and your voice, because they can buy our politicians, they can buy Washington, D.C., but they cannot buy America, and they cannot buy the American public and our voice.
Alex, to that young person, I'm speaking now somebody 18 to 24, who either is or will be eligible to vote and says, I'm listening to the program, I can agree with a lot that's said, but you know, I'm a Republican, my family's a Republican, I'm a Republican. And this sounds, I'll put this in hypothetical quotation marks, sounds to me like Dan Rather's surrounding himself with a bunch of Democratic Party liberal students. What do you say to that person, that young person who says, I hear you, I agree with a lot what you say, but you know, I'm a Republican, President Trump is a Republican, and I feel torn, I feel an obligation to stick with the party. On the other hand, I want to help.
You know, I think that first off, our generation is going to be the generation that strays from our parents' point of views on politics. I think that we're already seeing that. We're already seeing lines in the sand between families. And I think that another important thing is that this is not a partisan issue. This is a people issue. It's an issue of life or death. And to that kid, whoever you may be, it is okay to go against your parents' will, but it's also okay to vote as a Republican and hold your person that you elect accountable for your life. Call the person that you want to elect and say, this is what I would like. Will you do this if I elect you? And if they say no, then that makes your decision that much easier. And if they say yes, vote them, because they are supposed to represent you. We want to make sure that you are voting the person that you want to represent yourself, despite of what your viewpoints are, despite of what you think, despite of what your parents think. It's about us, because the politicians are supposed to represent us, not them, not the NRA, not anyone else.
And there are Republicans that are currently wearing their F rating from the NRA as a badge of honor. To the Republicans who have been accepting money from the NRA, we say, here's a clean slate moving forward. We've all learned a lesson here. You can't keep taking money from these gun lobbyists. I don't want to debate you on other issues right now, because the issue right now is the gun violence. It's one of the most important issues in the country. This next election can't be about parties. It has to be about that issue. So to the Republicans standing up against the NRA, and to the Republicans bringing common sense gun laws onto the floor and at least conversing about them, we thank you for taking these steps in the right direction. And we say that we will vote for whoever we feel is representing us, not just voting for red or blue.
And I also feel like I somewhat at least understand those individuals. I would describe myself as a dynamic conservative in that I'm fiscally Republican, but I'm socially liberal, and I'm somewhat of a Democrat in that area, because I believe that everybody should have their own rights to go about their social agenda. But in the same way that these people feel like they should stick to the party lines, that's absolutely okay. But make your voice heard. Make sure your elected official knows that you want more sensible gun legislation.
And let me come back. We're running close to the end of the time now. But, Emma, the NRA has demonstrated time and time again well over a quarter of a century that when it comes to getting people to the ballot box, when it comes to having the kind of leverage to threaten candidates for public office, they've outlasted, they've outvoted every movement, every effort at gun control. What makes this time different, if it is to be different?
This time is different because they use fear against us. They try to use everything. They try to use everything within their power to sell guns and to get us to think that we don't have any choice, that we have to vote this way, or we can't vote because our vote won't make any difference, because they're trying to make us apathetic. Everything that they do is a strategic political ploy. Everything that we do, we're not funded by money. We're trying desperately to reclaim our voices in America. We are using our votes as weapons. And we, as David always says, we will outlive them, because we're the voices who matter here. We're the ones who are going to be the faces of the nation. We're going to be shaping this nation. From this point out, we should have been shaping it a long time ago, but our voices were they were being ignored. And that's not what's happening anymore.
I want to thank all of you for being here. Unfortunately, time is up. We've been speaking with Jaclyn, Corin, Emma Gonzalez, David Hogg, Cameron Kasky, Alex Wind. I really appreciate you being here today. I wish you good luck and Godspeed as you go your way.
Thank you.
I want to end by saying that Broadway superstars Lin-Manuel Miranda and Ben Platt have just released the charity single called Found Tonight. It's a mashup of Hamilton's The Story of Tonight and Dear Evan Hansen's You Will Be Found. Now, a portion of proceeds will be donated to the March of Our Lives initiative and campaign for trying to stop gun violence. So we're going to go out on the song, Found Tonight, which Miranda and Platt will be performing live at tomorrow's March for Our Lives. Goodbye, everybody.